Welcome to Space News from the Electric Universe, brought to you by the Thunderbolts Project at thunderbolts.info. In the previous Space News, we discussed astronomers' recent admission that they now need a whole new theory to explain how planets form. Today, yet another discovery has shattered conventional ideas about planet formation and the so-called early solar system. Scientists studying data from NASA's Dawn spacecraft have learned some astonishing details about the asteroid Vesta. The standard model states that the asteroid came into existence at the same time as the solar system. However, key predictions of this model have been falsified by the Dawn data. The team was surprised by the absence of the mineral olivine, which they expected to find in abundance on the asteroid's surface. A report on the website Science Daily reads, "Olivine is a main component of planetary mantles and should have been found in large quantities on the surface of Vesta due to a double meteorite impact that, according to computer simulations, dug the celestial body's southern pole to a depth of 80 kilometers, catapulting large amounts of material to the surface." The absence of the expected olivine has led the scientists to conclude that the asteroid's crust must be almost 3 times thicker than expected. The Science Daily report concludes, "These discoveries challenge models that describe the formation of Vesta and consequently the formation of the solar system, including Earth. A more complex model of planet formation therefore has to be considered." However, despite these and countless other recent astonishing discoveries, institutional science's fundamental ideas about the solar system's origins remain unshaken.
In our last space news, we discussed the fact that researchers have finally admitted there is no successful model which can explain the formation of the solar system. And now we have, only about a week later, a report which says Asteroid Vesta to reshape theories of planet formation. The article actually goes to show just how difficult it is to shake a belief, because that's all we have. The story of the formation of the solar system is merely a once upon a time story, which has become a belief system. The article says, with its 500 kilometers diameter, the asteroid Vesta is one of the largest known planet embryos. It came into existence at the same time as the solar system. Well, here we have the assumption that the solar system was formed in a single event. It also assumes that the solar system was formed from a cloud of dust and gas, and these bodies accreted and formed, in this case, a molten core, a molten iron core, a crust and a mantle. All of the kinds of things that you would find on planet Earth. The problem is this body is quite small, and its composition and now the calculations of how its crust and mantle should appear don't seem to work. They don't match. One of the major points in the article is that using numerical simulations and data from the space mission Dawn, they have found that there is a striking absence of a particular mineral, olivine, on the asteroid's surface. Now, it was expected that one spectacular so-called impact crater was excavated to such a depth that anything beneath the crust should have been splattered onto the surface, and that particular mineral, olivine, is missing. The authors conclude that the asteroid's crust is 3 times thicker than expected due to the absence of olivine on the asteroid's surface. Here we see the data being forced to fit the discredited planet formation model instead of the model being forced to fit the data. In fact, the data should be added to the growing list of strikes against planet formation theory, together with solar system bodies that should have been shattered by impacts that are believed to have created craters a good fraction of the sizes of those bodies. Other outstanding examples are the 22-kilometer Martian moon Phobos with a 9-kilometer crater, and Saturn's 1,060-kilometer moon Tethys with a 660 kilometers crater. In each instance, the craters are neatly circular with no sign of splintering or fragmentation. It's as if they were machined into the surface by a cosmic drill.
In 2011, scientists were astonished to discover a second gigantic crater at Vesta's south pole, which they describe as a so-called impact basin. The principal investigator on NASA's Dawn mission said at the time, "There is a global dichotomy on Vesta and a fundamental difference between the northern and southern hemispheres. The northern hemisphere is older and heavily cratered, in contrast to the brighter southern hemisphere, where the texture is more smooth, and there are lots of sets of grooves. There is a massive mountain at the South Pole. One of the more surprising aspects is the set of deep equatorial troughs. This kind of global dichotomy is also witnessed on the planet Mars, where the northern hemisphere has been excavated up to 6 miles deep, as discussed in the feature-length documentary film, The Lightning-Scarred Planet Mars. This dichotomy falsifies the notion of billion-year processes defining the planetary surfaces. In the electric universe theory, comets and asteroids are the products of a relatively recent epoch of planetary instability, when electrical interactions between planets carved planetary surfaces.
It should be pointed out that the impact crater on this roughly 500 kilometers wide asteroid is 475 kilometers across. That's an incredible width on such a small body. What's more, it has a central peak which rises 22 kilometers high, which is twice the height of Mount Everest. The asteroid also sports equatorial troughs that run around the body. None of these things are well explained by impacts. What's more, this huge crater seems to be superimposed on another one, slightly smaller. This kind of scarring is typical of what you see on planetary surfaces and other moons, where you have impacts, so-called, superimposed one upon the other, often with the center of one crater perched on the rim of another. And this is the case here on Vesta as well. This is symptomatic of electrical arc machining of a surface, and even the grooves and sometimes raised ridges which have been seen on other bodies seem to be characteristic of a body that's caught up in an interplanetary electrical discharge. It's said that the material that was excavated from the asteroid Vesta arrives on Earth in the form of a certain kind of meteorite. But what if the meteorites and Vesta were all formed in the same catastrophic birth process of this particular body? Because in the electric universe, asteroids, comets, meteors, planets and moons are all born electrically. They are not formed by gravitational accretion. And therefore the internal structure of this body has nothing to do with the separation of elements from a primordial cloud of dust and gas. It has, instead, the composition of the body from which it was born, and that would have been highly differentiated to begin with. So the model of the formation of this object is completely wrong. And the data they are finding from the Dawn spacecraft supports this. This business of the composition of asteroid Vesta also harks back to the discovery from the Stardust mission, which found that the minerals being emitted from a comet also have the structure of the minerals from a well-differentiated body, not from primordial dust and gas.
In a related news item, the European Space Agency's probe, Rosetta, has acquired new images of what scientists are calling a contact binary comet. A recent BBC report says of this image, how the comet came to take this form is unknown. However, plasma scientist C.J. Ransom replicated this form in the laboratory, applying an electrical discharge to a mineral surface.
A related item just a few days ago is the announcement that the Rosetta mission's target, which was a comet, is now found to be a double comet. The sensational new images show that what we have is apparently what they call a contact binary. That is, two objects either attached or in contact with one another as they rotate. The article says, referring to this comet, that how it took this form is unknown. But just as the asteroid Vesta and the formation of those colossal so-called impact craters can be explained electrically more simply, so too can this particular double comet. It's been found in laboratory experiments that when a discharge strikes a mineral surface, it forms small spherules or small beads, and quite often those beads are joined together with a very narrow neck. So if comets are also formed in a plasma discharge and an electrical discharge to a planetary surface, the chances of forming these double-headed and maybe multiple-headed objects is quite high. There is another possibility, and that was put forward by Tom Van Flandern, and he suggested that based on the orbits of comets and asteroids, that they were formed in a single event, which he termed an exploding planet, without actually explaining how that planet might explode. But this fits with the electrical view that these objects are machined from a planet's surface electrically in a single event, or maybe a series of events, and therefore they will have orbits which show a common origin. And here we have an object which is also commonly found when an electric discharge strikes a mineral surface. We've seen that the notion that planets are formed by accretion of widely dispersed dust and gas just does not work. The electric universe model is quite different. In fact, it has more in common with the biological birth of an object, and that is that the electrical nature of all cosmic bodies is such that if they are disturbed, or if there's a powerful electric discharge to their surface, they may respond by actually ejecting part of their matter into space. The reason for this is down to our misunderstanding of gravity. If you think about it, every atom has almost all of the mass concentrated in the central nucleus, the positively charged central nucleus. In a gravitational field, therefore, every atom will be distorted by the nucleus being pulled to one side of the atom, in other words, towards the center of a planet, for instance. That means that the atom itself has the charge redistributed so that it forms a tiny electric dipole, with the positive pole facing inwards towards the center of the planet and the negative pole facing towards the surface. Now, in large bodies like stars and gas giants and so on, pressure ionization will allow some electrons to escape from the atoms, and they will tend to drift towards the surface, so that all cosmic bodies will have some form of electric charge on them. It's a situation known in the trade as an electret, something that maintains an electric charge. Now, if you imagine that a powerful electric discharge, or even a large body and a gravitational field disturbing another body, can cause an instability, and that instability can be so great, because it's electrical rather than gravitational, that the response will be the ejection of matter from one body into space. That in turn allows you to see the so-called accretion disks, where planets are supposed to be formed according to the standard theory, are actually expulsion disks. It's just been an assumption that they are accretion disks, but we know that stars expel matter. Our own star, our own sun, expels matter regularly into space at great velocity. So the very notion that stars and gas giants and so on can expel matter into space makes perfect sense. And it also explains why we find huge gas giant planets orbiting very closely their parent in other stellar systems. So when astronomers say that they need an entirely new theory of planet formation, they have one. Here it is, the electric universe model.
For continuous updates on space news from the electric universe, stay tuned to thunderbolts.info. A report on the website Science Daily reads, olivine is a main component of planetary mantles and should have been found in large quantities on the surface of Vesta due to a double meteorite impact that, according to computer simulations, dug the celestial body's southern pole to a depth of 80 kilometers, catapulting large amounts of material to the surface. The absence of the expected olivine has led the scientists to conclude that the scientists studying data from NASA's Dawn spacecraft have learned some astonishing details about the asteroid Vesta. The standard model states that the asteroid came into existence at the same time as the solar system. However, key predictions of this model have been falsified by the Dawn data. The team was surprised by the absence of the mineral olivine, which they expected to find in abundance on the asteroid's surface. Welcome to Space News from the Electric Universe, brought to you by the Thunderbolts Project at thunderbolts.info. In the previous Space News, we discussed astronomers' recent admission that they now need a whole new theory to explain how planets form. Today, yet another discovery has shattered conventional ideas about planet formation and the so-called early solar system. The asteroid's crust must be almost 3 times thicker than expected. The Science Daily report concludes, these discoveries challenge models that describe the formation of Vesta and consequently the formation of the solar system, including Earth. A more complex model of planet formation therefore has to be considered. However, despite these and countless other recent astonishing discoveries, institutional science's fundamental ideas about the solar system's origins remain unshaken.
In our last space news, we discussed the fact that researchers have finally admitted there is no successful model which can explain the formation of the solar system. And now we have, only about a week later, a report which says Asteroid Vesta to reshape theories of planet formation.